So my name is Kim Owens, and I am a digital and content marketing strategist. Been in the tech industry for decades, and but my focus in tech has also been in the world of for social justice. And so I felt it was really important to put this panel together because decolonizing AI is something that is becoming more prevalent, and I have the honor of José joining me today from the Algorithmic Justice League and also a professor at CU Boulder. José, if you can share with us your background and your involvement in AI, and also how you come to work with the Algorithmic Justice League and what their work is.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kim, for reaching out and for organizing today's session. Hola a todos. I'm José Ramón Lizárraga. I am born and raised in Salinas, California, Steinbeck country. My parents are both Mexican immigrants. My mom from Jalisco and my dad from Sinaloa. I grew up poor, working poor in the Salinas Valley. And living in the rural part of Salinas, I came to understand the experiences of the differences between the resources that we saw the more affluent people, the more white people living closer to Monterey versus those of us who were living in the rural parts of Salinas. And so that kind of informed my desire from an early age to center the stories of our communities and to do, when I was trying to figure out what my career was going to be, it was around finding creative ways of telling our stories in order to enact change. My early career or my early training is in fine art. I am a painter and a digital artist, but soon discovered that I wanted to do more with that in terms of activism and mobilizing and scholarly work. And so that's when I decided that I was going to get my master's degree at Stanford in learning design and technology and my PhD in learning sciences and human development with a focus on technology at Berkeley. And so at the core, my work has been about finding creative ways, using creativity to enact change. And so that's what I try to do, not only in my work as a professor, but also in my work that I do with my own dog and in my social media presence. And that's what attracted the attention of the Algorithmic Justice League, is my desire to center storytelling, but also because I've always been interested in the possibilities of technology in transforming our everyday lives, but always with a lens towards, again, which is the theme of today, decolonizing the ways that we think about technology and for whom the technologies are designed, and whose hopes, desires, and futurities we're thinking about when we're designing technologies.
That's fantastic. And that's the as we all know, machine learning has been around for a while. Algorithms have been around for a while. I mean, that's what drives so much of search engines, and how Gmail finishes their sentences and all of these things. But it wasn't until ChatGPT released their public version almost a year ago now, that I think the greater world realized, like, oh, AI. But for many years, algorithms and technology have not been used for good. Right. They've been basically an extension of white supremacy and oppression of marginalized communities. So what do you see, like, in your work? What is one area of focus, because there's so many that we can discuss today, given the fact that we only have 30 minutes, that where we see what's going on? I mean, it was kind of mentioned earlier this morning with no Time for ICE. Yeah. So maybe you can extrapolate on that a little bit, and give the people an understanding of what's been going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to make some plugs for my colleagues here in terms of who, because you're right. I think a lot of the explorations around algorithms have been happening for a while. And so Sophia Noble, who I believe is she at uh, USC or UCLA? I don't know. She's in California. Sophia Noble wrote a wonderful book in I think it was 2016 called Algorithms of Oppression. And she actually helped set the stage for a lot of what feels like it's new conversations, but it's actually new, not
Yeah,
that new in terms of
yeah.
conversations. And also Ruha Benjamin, who is now writing her third book around these kinds of ideas. Are people to look at. Yeah, in terms of the way again AI and specifically in the Algorithmic Justice League, we because of our founder Joy Bulamwini, we have been concerned a lot with facial recognition technologies and technologies that are in a sense designed to surveil, much like we saw in this morning's examples. In my work in particular, which is what informs my scholarly work, not only as a professor but also in my work with Algorithmic Justice League, are these ideas of carceral pedagogies or carceral frameworks that inform what how technologies are designed. And by carceral, I mean that there's a kind of colonial way of thinking of how certain how we compartmentalize humanity more broadly. And so we see that the kind of the colonial impulse with some of these technologies is to collect as much data as we can from people and everyday people in order to control them and in order to make sure that they stay in their lanes, right. And the more insidious part, if we think about that, is that carceral frameworks have implicitly uh, been racist, and they've been anti-black. They've had all of these ideologies kind of embedded in them, and so of course any technology where, especially when we see it deployed and enacted in some of these public spaces, when the carceral framework is what is kind of our default, of course, then those are the logics that inform how we collect the data and how we identify what is good, what is bad, and where we put humanity and compartmentalize humanity. I think one of the things about the and again, when we get to the decolonial part of this conversation, we can talk a little bit more about this. But kind of the colonial framing is that there's good and bad, right? And the best way to predict whether something bad is going to happen is to make sure that we have the most that we design algorithms that predict crime in order to make sure that we all feel safe. Now, of course, we know that predictions of crime or even the conceptualizing of crime has been racist historically in this country.
Yep.
And so it informs how we even design those technologies in the first
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
Some of the most egregious, of course, examples that we've seen is when FRTs or facial recognition technologies falsely identify people as criminals because of the faulty systems and data sets that inform the technologies. One of them being, what was his name? Robert Williams, who it was a big case. It was shown, his case was written about in the New York Times. About the FRT, the technology falsely recognized him as a criminal. He was arrested, and it wasn't until he was at the police station that they actually took out the picture of the person who's the
Yeah.
computer supposedly said it was, and they looked nothing alike, right?
Right.
So um, these systems cause real harm. They damage dignity, and they can damage opportunities for people.
Well, it takes people. For one thing, it's traumatic to be thrown in jail,
Yeah.
and arrested for something that you didn't do. Second, you've got to turn around and hire a lawyer to prove your innocence. Third, it takes you away from your family, it takes you away from your work. I mean, there was a case just like less than a month ago where an 8-month, well, a pregnant woman of 8 months, she was Black, and they arrested her for robbery or something like that. It just strictly off of facial recognition. And so I don't know if she turned around and sued them, but I think there was something to that effect. And as much as they say that these systems have improved, it doesn't seem like they really have. If these things are still happening now, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's really it is it's you can almost see how certain police departments were they stopped the stop and frisk way of racial oppression in certain neighborhoods, and now they're just using this as kind of another form, but like, whoa, we didn't physically stop somebody.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
When the logics are unexamined and disrupted, no matter what method you use, it's going to keep replicating. How, like, just because you're doing having a robot do it now doesn't mean that it's you're not removing you're not that distant from the act of causing that harm. One of the things that I was reminded of today, in this morning's presentation from the people from Mi Gente, was that there's the egregious carceral pedagogies of or frameworks of using this technology, and then there are the ones that kind of like they get in under the radar, right? One of them, somebody brought up the how they're using facial recognition at the airports now, right? They don't tell you that you can opt out. They say, get ready, we're going to take your picture, right? And they're collecting that data, right? And without telling you that you can opt out. And so it's insidious. It's like everywhere. And if we're not trained well enough to recognize that what that's informing in terms of a broader framing of how these technologies are being used and where that data is going and who it's serving, it's really kind of scary, actually.
It is scary. And so where do you see regulation? Because it's almost like governments are always in catch-up mode. They didn't regulate the internet in the early days when they should have, because they just had no idea. I keep thinking about that Senate hearing where the one senator asked Zuckerberg, how do they make money? He didn't even know. It's like, oh, come on. So, I mean, I know that Europe is a lot more strict than we are, because I just feel like our Congress is more in the pockets of big tech. And, because we're such a campaign driven kind of government agency.
Lobbying.
Yeah, all of the lobbying and everything. So where do you see regulation going?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I mean, we just saw kind of the debacles that are happening in our leadership.
Yeah, they can't even run
yesterday. They can't even like keep us. So it's interesting because it's we're seeing some great examples in other countries of people really jumping on this, right? And what's interesting about implementation of technologies in other countries is that they're not quite where we are, right? So we're like implementing and at the same time like realizing that we need regulation, and it's like you're right, it's not catching up. And so we see examples of, like, in Europe, of the EU AI Act, that is the first kind of like regulation on artificial intelligence. So there's modeling out there that I think that our legislators can model regulation on. Currently, there's a reason why, and I see a comment here with DARE and AJL. DARE and AJL like are kind of like the voice of conscience right now for our lawmakers. In fact, the Joy Buolamwini just had our founder of AJL just had a sit down with Joe Biden, and so they're listening. It's coming, but like I just mentioned earlier, it's just we can't. Our legislators can't agree on on many things, and so right now, again, there are models out there, and I just gave a talk at UNESCO. UNESCO, they're organizing. They're very well organized organized in terms of putting out recommendations and guidelines for implementation of AI in other countries. But right now, I think AJL is doing the work on the ground, and so is DARE in terms of making sure that that our government knows what's happening in terms of so they make well-informed decisions. One thing that I will point out about these two organizations is that they're both run by Black women, right? And so there is, and I'm not just saying that from a representational standpoint. I mean that they're bringing a certain sensibility in terms of making sure that stories are attached to the data that's going out there in terms of of the real world harms that are happening, right? So we always pair a real world like impact story with the necessary regulations that we need to start engaging in order to highlight that these are real harms that are happening in everyday lives of people, especially people who are mostly impacted and marginalized in our communities already.
That's so important because I think if you rattle off a lot of statistics, people kind of glaze over sometimes. If you correlate the actual personal effects or impacts of a population or individual circumstances that were negatively impacted, and put people in the shoes of those who were impacted, saying, this could happen to me.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
That's when the light goes off and they're like, oh, okay, I need to start paying attention. This is really important.
Dr. Buolamwini actually says, if you have a face, then you have a voice in the conversation around algorithmic justice. If you're a gender minority, if you are, I mean, like, there's some explorations, part of the strand that I help with is around drag versus AI, and which is connected to trans rights and other types of gender minority rights, for their protection against some of these surveilling technologies and how they are treated and so on. Yeah. So much. I'm looking at time. I'm like, oh my God, we only have 12 minutes.
I know. We could talk a whole day on this, honestly, with a bunch of different people. So it's with, like 12 minutes left, to end on because I do believe in not just discussing problems and calling them out, but what solutions can we have? How can we play a role? Because it's affecting all of us. I mean, Clearview has scraped 30 billion images from social media. So we're all in their database. I mean, seriously, we are all in their database. So how can we play a role either individually as an employee for an organization who may be utilizing AI, or even, if we're company owners or president in leadership roles?
Yeah,
how can we decolonize? Help to decolonize.
How can we decolonize, right? I mean, I think multiple ways and layers of doing this work, right? And this was mentioned earlier. Being aware of your rights is something that is pivotal and important, right? And so when we are AJL, for example, and the products that are and the content that is put out is about like, hey, you need to know what your rights are and what people can collect and what they can't collect in terms of your data, or when can you opt out from using certain technologies. And campaigns, organizations like DARE and AJL are really good at creating these really impactful campaigns that create change, right? Like the IRS not using ID Me for verification processes. So there's campaigning and stuff that can happen. In terms of like decolonizing is a longitudinal, very like, I mean, that's going to take a long time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To do. But to enter these spaces with a decolonial lens as either a worker in tech or someone who's in leadership in tech is a concerted effort to challenge the colonial logics of what we do in our designs, right? And by that I mean, who does it serve, right? And also, whose future are we imagining as we're designing these technologies? Whose stories are we thinking about, even in our mind's eye, in terms of when we're creating these technologies? What do we mean by safety when we are designing technologies, and what are we thinking about in terms of convenience, and so on? Often we think that our voices are in there, but they're not, right? They're kind of like quite literally whitewashed versions of
Yeah.
our Latinidad and of our blackness, of our of what makes our communities unique. And so what I have found, and what some people have been experimenting with in the academy and in other spaces, is to really design for opportunities of co-design, meaning that the voices of our communities are in there, they're in the room, not just like documented, right? Not just go out there and do a survey and then come back and do your research and development, but that they're actually in the room as you're doing the work of designing, of even ideating what what your initial intervention or technology is going to be. So I think in my work, that's what we have been trying to kind of model is to bring in interdisciplinary or create interdisciplinary and intergenerational spaces for design and implementation. Again, these are like really small things that I think smaller tech companies and startup companies are starting to do, but it's not necessarily something that is still a go-to process for bigger companies, because it takes a lot of effort. It's easier to just bring in big data to inform your designs. But then again, I mean, that's where, if we really want to imagine a future where we're trying to disrupt some of these really entrenched systems of oppression, then we need to think outside of that box.
Absolutely. And, in general, I like, the conversation, especially with regards to ChatGPT and the other models. They, people are, the WGA strike, the SAG-AFTRA strike.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, how is that going? How is AI impacting me personally in terms of my profession, my ability to earn an income, those types of things, and the the general stream of fear is it going to replace me? And the answer back that I've heard several times in other sessions that I've gone to or like listened in on is it's not. You're not going to be replaced by AI, but you will be replaced by a person who knows how to use AI.
Right.
And so I think more than anything, we need to individually and as a community really understand the different facets, even at a high level. I mean, Google has free, generative AI courses that you can take. I think it's really important and our responsibility for all of us to really understand what it is, how it applies to my profession, and then also how my company is utilizing it. Because that's where we can, even the smallest of effort or the smallest slice of the pie, if we are inserting ourselves into those conversations, we're giving our feedback. What was it that we were talking about? We're too loud or something this morning.
We're passionate, not mad. I'm like, no, I am mad too.
I'm also
angry and passionate.
I'm
Um,
loud and angry. Well, you just have to, open your news app and you get angry. So it's not
exactly,
difficult.
exactly. I just want to remind people. I mean, we have 5 minutes, but if you have any questions, please put them in
Yeah.
the Q&A in the chat.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I was going to say about like, there's the other more direct recommendations that AJL has, right? Be transparent about your models. Where is the data coming from? How are you? What do your models look like, right? And to push industry to be transparent about that is a difficult thing for various reasons, but that's important for this type of work. Having a human rights centered type of paradigm is also really important, and do your diligence when your due diligence across all aspects of your design process and implementation process, that you're thinking about the human
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
your and not profit, right?
Yeah.
That, I mean, it should be kind of like logical, but it isn't for many people. And in terms of like proper procedures, like look outwards, have external people come and do your audits. Internal auditing should not be something that is, I mean, that's the go-to, right?
Yeah.
Who knows better than whether we're doing something right than us ourselves? Actually, you don't. um,
Always be skeptical of internal audits. When people are auditing themselves, they're like, no.
I audit myself all the time, and that's why I lose relationships, because there's something wrong with me. That must be you. So anyway.
Yeah. The other idea I had, because it came up in conversation earlier today, was, there's ERG programs within different organizations that are focused on either Latiné or women or the LGBTQ plus community. I think that more organizations should have an ERG for AI, and just everybody just being truly honest about what's going on, what they see as potential red flags, ways to solve them, because again, you want to be solutions oriented. But that could be another way where all kinds of people could have a voice, could play a role in the development, implementation of AI in any organization, be it small, medium, or large.
Absolutely.
Granted, they may not, if it's a large organization, they may not want to hear what you have to say, but that's the power of, we have to use our voice. Joy went and started Algorithmic Justice League because she was in the position to have a voice about what she saw as a problem,
Right.
and the report that she put together, that they realized they didn't want to release it. Right. And so they pushed her out the door. But now guess what? She doesn't have just the audience of Google. She's got the audience of the whole world. And now she's got a book, so just keep that in mind. If people don't want to hear what you have to say, there's usually a reason behind it. So just, in social justice work, you have to just keep moving forward.
Exactly. And the thing, and I like how you said it, because I think the reframing of that is there are people who want to hear it, and not necessarily the people. And there's plenty of us outside, right, who resonate with those stories. And so that's when the collectivizing can happen, is that we're out there, and we just need to make sure that we and one of the things that I've been learning from today is that, man, there are Latine and Latinx communities have such a rich stories, right?
Yes.
And so to think about how, and I'm writing a piece right now about Chicanx praxis and AI. I'm writing it with my husband and another co-author at Columbia University. And we're thinking about that. Like, what is particularly Latinx and Latine about our praxis that can help inform how do we improve AI for our stories and for our futurity. So stay tuned for that. Oh, he's actually texting me right now.
You're like, 1 more minute.
No, my husband's at MIT giving a talk right now.
Yeah.
Like, are you done?
And it is all about the community. So this has been an amazing community day.
Yes.
I've loved every minute of it. And there's 2 more sessions about venture capital they're going to be starting. That we just the notification on. Jose, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim. And
We'll have to meet in person sometime.
we will.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.